Most traders don't fail because they don't know enough. They fail because they never stay the same long enough to find out what they actually know. They fail because they're addicted to the feeling of almost. Almost had it. Almost broke even. Almost caught the move. Almost found the strategy. Almost became consistent. And that almost becomes a lifestyle. It becomes the normal. It becomes the loop they live in for months, for years, and then one day they wake up and they realize they've been almost their entire trading career. Not because they aren't capable, but because they never created a stretch of time where their behavior stayed consistent long enough for the truth to reveal itself. And that's why I want to talk about something that sounds so simple, it almost feels insulting. But the more experienced you get, the more you realize simplicity is the point. I want to talk about why everything changes after 20 consistent trades. Not 20 trades, not 20 random emotional flips, not 20 trades across 5 strategies, 3 time frames, and 4 different moods. I'm talking about 20 consistent trades. Same setup, same risk, same execution rules, same process, same structure, same approach. Whether you win or lose, whether your last trade made you feel like a genius or made you feel like quitting. Because after 20 consistent trades, trading stops being a fantasy and starts being a reality. It stops being an emotional roller coaster and starts being a business. It stops being this mystical thing where you're searching for the secret, and it becomes exactly what it always was, a skill that rewards disciplined repetition. And before we get deep into this, if you're the type of person who's tired of the motivational fluff and you want real trading psychology that actually changes how you perform, like this video right now, like it because every time you support content like this, you're literally voting for more real information and less fake guru noise. And if you want to become the type of trader that doesn't just understand the concepts but actually lives them, subscribe. Because the whole mission of Traders Mind TV is to build traders who are calm, consistent, and dangerous in the market. Not emotional, random, and constantly starting over. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. Most traders never get to experience what trading really feels like. They experience random trading. They experience hope trading. They experience fear trading. They experience dopamine trading. They experience panic. They experience revenge. They experience the high of being right and the humiliation of being wrong. They experience the identity crisis of watching a chart do something they didn't predict and suddenly questioning everything about themselves. That's what most traders call trading. But real trading, the kind that produces consistent results, is much quieter than that. It's almost boring. It's repetitive. It doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like routine. The reason 20 consistent trades changes everything is because it is the first number big enough to force the truth out of you. One trade can lie to you. 5 trades can lie to you. Even 10 trades can still be a blur where your brain convinces you of whatever it wants to believe. But 20 consistent trades? That's enough to expose your habits. That's enough to reveal whether you're disciplined or just inspired. That's enough to show whether your strategy has an edge or whether you've been surviving on luck. That's enough to show whether you've been following rules or just pretending. And notice what I'm emphasizing. It's not 20 winning trades. It's not 20 perfect trades. It's 20 consistent trades. Because consistency is the door. Profitability is the room behind it. But you don't get into the room without going through the door, and you don't go through the door by thinking about it. You go through it by doing it, over and over, even when it's uncomfortable. Now I want you to picture the average trader. Not the one you see on Instagram, not the one acting rich in a rented car, not the one taking pictures with fake funded accounts. I'm talking about the real average trader, the one who wakes up in the morning, checks the charts, starts seeing patterns, starts feeling hope, and then gets hit with fear the moment price moves against them. That trader takes a trade and immediately starts sweating. Immediately starts calculating what they'll do with the money if it wins and what they'll tell themselves if it loses. That trader doesn't even understand why they entered sometimes. It's like they black out. They see something, they click, and then they spend the rest of the trade trying to mentally justify it. And the moment the trade closes, they don't say good execution or bad execution. They say I'm up or I'm down. Their self-worth is connected to the outcome. That trader is not experiencing trading as a skill. They're experiencing trading as identity. And that's why it hurts. That's why losses feel personal. That's why wins feel like validation. That's why they can't stay consistent. Because they're not trading the market, they're trading their emotions. 20 consistent trades starts ripping that identity off of the outcome. Slowly, not instantly, but surely, because the process becomes the thing you measure, not the result. And once you start measuring process, your entire brain starts shifting. The pressure reduces, the desperation reduces, the need to make something happen reduces. You start realizing you don't need to force anything. Your job is to show up and execute the same way every time. Your job is not to win today. Your job is to perform today. And that's why the first thing that changes after 20 consistent trades is your relationship with uncertainty. Most traders hate uncertainty. They want to know, they want a guarantee, they want confirmation, they want to feel safe. They want to enter only when they're sure. But the market never offers sure. The market offers probability. It offers risk and reward. It offers uncertainty with opportunity. And when you haven't built consistency yet, uncertainty feels like danger. But after 20 consistent trades, uncertainty starts to feel normal. It starts to feel like the price of admission. The way a poker player doesn't freak out because the next card could ruin them. The way a casino doesn't panic because someone hits a jackpot. They understand the math. They understand the long game. They understand the consistency of the edge. And once uncertainty becomes normal, fear loses its power. Let me tell you what fear really is in trading. Fear is not the market. Fear is the gap between your behavior and your self-trust. Fear is what happens when you know you're not consistent. Fear is what happens when you've betrayed your own rules so many times that you don't trust yourself anymore. That's why you hesitate. That's why you second guess. That's why you close early. That's why you move stops. That's why you widen stops. That's why you revenge trade. Because the moment you get uncomfortable, you don't have self-trust to lean on. Now here's the part nobody tells you. Confidence in trading doesn't come from winning. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. It comes from doing what you said you would do. It comes from executing your plan even when it loses. Because the moment you do that, you create identity. You start becoming the trader you've been trying to become. Not because your PNL says so, but because your behavior says so. That's why 20 consistent trades create something powerful. It creates evidence. Evidence that you are disciplined, evidence that you can follow rules, evidence that you can operate like a professional, evidence that you can handle discomfort without self-destructing. And once you have evidence, your mind stops arguing with itself. It stops negotiating. It stops trying to find loopholes. It starts trusting. And if you've ever struggled with hesitation, if you've ever stared at a setup and felt your finger freeze on the mouse like you're watching an opportunity slip away while your brain screams at you, comment 20 under this video. Comment 20 because that comment will be your commitment to stop playing games with yourself. It's easy to say you want consistency. It's different to publicly claim it. And when you claim it, you raise the standard for yourself. Now, I want to go deeper into the moment everything changes, because it's not magic. It's not like trade number 20 hits and the heavens open. It's more like this. You start trade number 1 full of hope, full of motivation, full of belief that this time you'll finally be different. Trade number 2 is still fresh. Trade number 3 is when the first discomfort hits. Trade number 4 is when you start thinking about changing something. Trade number 5 is when your emotions start begging you to take shortcuts. Trade number 6 is when you start looking at other strategies again. Trade number 7 is when the market gives you a loss and you start questioning everything. Trade number 8 is when you win and your ego starts talking. Trade number 9 is when you start thinking, maybe I can increase my risk. Trade number 10 is when you start thinking, maybe I should take trades outside the setup too because I'm in the zone. This is where most traders die. Not literally, but mentally. This is where consistency breaks. This is where the 20 consistent trades challenge ends for most people without them even realizing it. Because they think consistency means being consistent when it's easy. They think consistency means being consistent when you're winning. They think consistency means being consistent when you feel motivated. That's not consistency. That's convenience. Consistency is when you do it even when your emotions hate it. Consistency is when you stick to the rule even when the rule makes you miss a trade that would have won. Consistency is when you take the setup even after losing 3 in a row. Consistency is when you keep the same risk even after winning 3 in a row. Consistency is when you're not trying to outsmart the plan. You're trying to outlast your impulses. Trade number 11 through 15 is where the mind starts getting tired. This is where the excitement fades. This is where the novelty disappears. This is where you realize, wow, trading is actually repetitive. It's not constant adrenaline, it's patience, waiting, and execution. This is where the market tests your maturity. Well, this is where you find out if you actually love trading or if you just love the fantasy of being a trader. And trade number 16 through 20 is where the shift happens. Because by then you've faced the discomfort enough times that it starts losing its bite. You've faced boredom enough times that you stop needing entertainment. You've faced uncertainty enough times that you stop demanding certainty. You faced losses enough times that you stop seeing them as trauma. You faced wins enough times that you stop seeing them as identity. Everything becomes calmer, and the first time you complete 20 consistent trades, you feel something you've never felt before. You feel peace. Not because you made money, but because you finally stopped fighting yourself. Let me tell you a story from the first person perspective because I know exactly what it feels like to be at war with your own mind in the market. There was a time when I couldn't go 3 trades in a row without switching something. I'd take a loss and I'd immediately feel like the strategy was broken. I'd take a win and I'd immediately feel like I needed to take more trades. I was addicted to the feeling of figuring it out, not realizing that figuring it out was just another form of procrastination. I remember one week in particular where I was so convinced I needed a better entry. Not a better system, not better risk management, not better discipline, just a better entry. Because in my mind, the reason I wasn't consistent was because the strategy wasn't perfect. I told myself if I could just find that perfect entry, everything would click. So I spent hours doing what I thought was work, backtesting, watching YouTube, looking at different indicators, comparing timeframes, tweaking rules. It felt productive. It felt like I was improving. But really, I was running from the hard part. The hard part wasn't finding the perfect entry. The hard part was sticking to the same entry even when it loses. The hard part was accepting that no entry is perfect. The hard part was accepting that trading is a probability game, and the only way to win probability games is through consistency. That week, I kept changing, and by Friday, I was exhausted, not from trading, from thinking, from second guessing, from trying to be too smart. And I remember staring at my screen, feeling defeated, thinking, why does this feel so hard? Why does it feel like I'm always fighting? Why does it feel like I can't just do what I said I would do? And I realized something in that moment. I didn't have a strategy problem, I had a self-respect problem. Because every time I broke my rules, I was basically telling myself I didn't matter. Every time I disrespected my plan, I was teaching my brain that my word means nothing. And the market doesn't reward that. The market punishes that. Because inconsistency is expensive. That was the day I committed to 20 consistent trades. Same setup, same risk, same execution. I told myself I wasn't allowed to change anything until trade number 20 was complete. No adjustments, no new indicators, no maybe this time. And I'll be honest, the first few trades were uncomfortable. I had the urge to tweak. I had the urge to improve. I had the urge to fix. But I had to keep reminding myself, improvement without consistency is a delusion. It's like trying to optimize a workout plan you never follow. It's like trying to perfect a diet you don't stick to. It doesn't matter how good your plan is if you can't execute it. When I hit trade number 20, I didn't feel like a genius. I felt like an adult. I felt like a man who finally did what he said he would do. And that feeling was more valuable than any single win, because that feeling was the beginning of real confidence. Now let's flip perspectives. Let's talk about a third-person story, because maybe you don't relate to my exact situation, but you'll relate to what this trader went through. There was a guy in a trading community I watched for months. He was the type that always asked questions, always looked for reassurance, always needed validation before taking a trade. He would post charts and ask, is this valid? Is this a good entry? Should I hold? Should I close? Should I move stop to break even? His emotions were always running the show. And the thing about this guy was that he wasn't dumb. He was actually very smart. He understood concepts. He could explain support and resistance. He could talk about liquidity. He knew the buzzwords. He watched all the videos. He had access to good information, but he wasn't consistent. He was a collector of knowledge, not a practitioner of discipline. Then one day, after blowing another small account, he disappeared. No posts, no charts, no questions. And when he came back weeks later, he posted something different. He didn't ask anything. He said, I'm doing 20 consistent trades. No opinions, no feedback, no adjustments. And he posted the rules, simple rules. And then he started posting results, not in a bragging way, but in a journal way. Trade 1 followed rules, loss. Trade 2 followed rules, win. Trade 3 followed rules, loss. Trade 4 followed rules, win. It was boring, it was simple, it wasn't dramatic. But something was happening. His tone changed, his vibe changed. He wasn't begging for validation anymore, he wasn't freaking out. He started sounding calm. He started sounding like someone who finally accepted the game. By the time he hit trade 20, he wasn't rich. He didn't suddenly become a millionaire, but he became something more valuable. He became stable. He became consistent. And once you become stable, the money becomes inevitable if the strategy has an edge. Because the biggest obstacle is gone. The obstacle wasn't the market, it was him. Now let's bring it directly to you, because if you're watching this video right now, there's a high chance you're at a crossroads. You've probably been trading for a while. You've probably tasted wins. You've probably tasted losses. You've probably felt the excitement and the pain. You've probably had moments where you thought you had it figured out and moments where you felt hopeless. You've probably switched strategies more times than you want to admit. You've probably told yourself this is the last time, more times than you can count. So here's what I want to say to you in the most direct way possible. If you want your trading to change, you don't need a new strategy. You need a new identity. And identity comes from consistency. You become who you repeatedly are, not who you occasionally are, not who you are on your best day, not who you are when you're motivated. You become who you are when it's hard. And after 20 consistent trades, you finally start becoming that trader. You start seeing the market differently. You stop seeing it as a monster. You stop seeing it as this unpredictable enemy. You start seeing it as a business environment. You start seeing your job as execution, not prediction. You start seeing losses as data, not disrespect. You start seeing wins as confirmation of process, not proof of greatness. And this is why everything changes, because the real battle in trading is not technical, it's psychological, it's behavioral, it's identity. The charts are not the hardest part. The hardest part is the part where you have to look at yourself and realize, I keep messing this up because I keep abandoning myself. Now, if this message is already hitting you, share this video. Share it because there's somebody out there who's one emotional blow up away from quitting, and they don't need another strategy, they need this truth. And if you've ever felt like trading is harder than it should be, subscribe. Subscribe because this channel is going to keep giving you what most people avoid, the mental frameworks that actually create consistent traders. When people hear 20 consistent trades, they think it's about proving the strategy. That's part of it. But it's bigger than that. It's about proving you. It's about proving that you can be trusted with capital. It's about proving that you're not a child emotionally. It's about proving that you're not going to self-sabotage the moment the market doesn't do what you want. Because here's a brutal truth. The market doesn't pay you for being right. It pays you for being disciplined. There are traders who are right often and still lose money because they have no risk management. There are traders who are wrong often and still make money because they know how to manage risk and stay consistent. The edge is not just in the strategy. The edge is in the ability to execute it consistently. Now I want to break down what consistent actually means, because most traders misunderstand it. Consistent doesn't mean you take every trade. Consistent doesn't mean you trade every day. Consistent doesn't mean you force setups. Consistent means that when your setup appears, you take it the same way. Same entry logic, same stop placement logic, same take profit logic, same risk, same rules, no improvisation, no emotional overrides. And the reason this is so powerful is because it turns trading into a controlled experiment. You stop living in chaos, you stop living in randomness, you stop guessing, you stop blaming the market, you start collecting data. 20 consistent trades gives you a data set, and once you have a data set, you can improve. Without a data set, you're just reacting, and reacting is the enemy of profitability. Let me say that again because it's so important. Reacting is the enemy of profitability. Reaction is emotional, reaction is random, reaction is impulsive. Profitability is planned. Profitability is deliberate. Profitability is boring repetition. And that brings us to the second thing that changes after 20 consistent trades. Your emotions start detaching from the immediate outcome. Before consistency, every trade feels like life or death. Every trade feels like the trade that will save you. Every trade feels like it decides whether you are a good trader or a bad trader. After 20 consistent trades, trades stop feeling like that. They start feeling like reps, like practice, like execution. And when trades become reps, the anxiety disappears. This is what athletes understand. When a basketball player shoots free throws, they don't treat every shot like it's the championship. They practice, they repeat, they build muscle memory, they build consistency. So when the championship moment comes, their body knows what to do. They don't think, they perform. Trading is no different. You need reps. You need repetition. You need to build your muscle memory of execution. And 20 consistent trades is the beginning of that. Now, I want to tell you a story from the viewer perspective. Imagine you are a trader named Sean. Sean is not dumb. He works a job, he's ambitious, he wants more. He sees trading as freedom. He watches YouTube at night, he studies charts on his phone, he dreams about quitting his job. He wants to be the guy who makes money while others sleep. Sean starts trading. He takes a few wins early. He feels unstoppable. He feels like he found the cheat code. He starts risking more. He starts taking more trades. He starts entering without rules. He starts thinking he can feel the market. Then he hits a loss, then another loss, then another. Suddenly the market feels like it's against him. Suddenly he starts chasing. Suddenly he starts revenge trading. Suddenly he's angry. He closes his laptop frustrated. He tells himself he needs a better strategy. He starts strategy hopping. He tries scalping. He tries day trading. He tries swing trading. He tries indicators. He tries price action. He tries smart money concepts. He tries everything. And after months of this, he becomes exhausted. Not from trading, from inconsistency, from mental warfare, from constantly starting over, from constantly feeling like he's behind. Then one day he hears about the concept of 20 consistent trades. And at first he thinks, that's too simple. That can't be the answer. But then he realizes maybe the reason it's not working is because he's never actually done that. He's never actually been consistent for long enough to let anything work. So he decides he'll do it. He chooses one setup. He writes down the rules. He commits to the same risk. He commits to journaling every trade. He commits to not changing anything until trade 20 is done. Trade 1 is uncomfortable. He wants to tweak. He wants to avoid the trade. He wants to take something else. He forces himself to follow rules. Trade 2 is a loss. He feels the sting. He wants to break rules. He forces himself to follow rules. Trade 3 is a win. He feels relief. He wants to take more trades. He forces himself to follow rules. Trade 4 is a loss. He feels anger. He wants revenge. He forces himself to follow rules, and around trade 12, something changes. Not in the market, in him. He starts feeling calmer. He starts trusting the plan. He starts trusting himself. He starts realizing he doesn't need to be emotional. He starts realizing he doesn't need to chase. He starts realizing trading is not about excitement. It's about execution. By trade 20, Sean is a different trader. Not because he found a secret, because he finally stayed still long enough to build discipline. That is what 20 consistent trades does. It builds discipline. It builds self-trust. It builds calm. It builds maturity. It builds the foundation of a professional. And this is why most traders never reach profitability. Because profitability is built on the foundation of consistent execution. If you cannot execute consistently, you are not trading. You are gambling. You might call it trading. You might look like you're trading. But the process is gambling, and gambling always ends the same way. In destruction, in burnout, in quitting, in despair. Now I want to talk about the deeper psychological reason 20 consistent trades changes everything. And this is where it gets real. Humans are emotional pattern machines. We are wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Trading is the perfect environment to expose that wiring, because the market constantly tempts you with pleasure and threatens you with pain. A trade goes in your favor, you feel pleasure. A trade goes against you, you feel pain. Your brain wants to avoid pain. So it tries to control. It tries to interfere. It tries to do something. It tries to take profit early. It tries to move stop. It tries to close. It tries to adjust. But that interference is what destroys the edge. The edge is in the plan. The profit is in the execution. The pain is in the inconsistency. When you commit to 20 consistent trades, you are training your brain to tolerate discomfort without acting on it. This is emotional mastery. This is discipline. This is what separates amateurs from professionals. Because professional traders don't have less emotions. They just have more control. They have trained themselves to not obey every feeling. 20 consistent trades is emotional training. It's like going to the gym for your mind. Every time you follow your rules despite discomfort, you strengthen the discipline muscle. Every time you break rules, you weaken it. And after 20 consistent trades, that muscle finally starts to build. You finally start feeling strong. You finally start feeling in control. You finally start feeling like you can handle this. And when you feel like you can handle this, fear disappears. Because fear is not the market. Fear is the belief that you can't handle the market. Now here's the devil's advocate truth. Some of you watching this are going to do 20 consistent trades and still lose money. And I need you to hear this clearly. That does not mean the process failed. That means you discovered the truth. You discovered that your strategy does not have an edge. And that is still winning, because now you know. Most traders never discover the truth because they never run the experiment. They keep changing variables. They keep changing rules. So they never know if the strategy works. They never know if they work. They never know anything. 20 consistent trades gives you clarity, and clarity is power. And the moment you have clarity, you can make intelligent decisions, you can refine, you can optimize, you can improve, you can adjust with purpose, not panic. That's why everything changes. Because trading becomes logical. Before consistency, trading is emotional. After consistency, trading becomes logical. You start making decisions based on data, not feelings. You start making decisions based on process, not impulse. You start building a real system, and once you have a real system, money is only a matter of time. Now I want to talk about what happens internally when you complete those 20 consistent trades. This is where the identity shift happens. Before consistency, you see yourself as someone who is trying to become a trader. After consistency, you start seeing yourself as a trader. And that difference matters. Because when you see yourself as someone who is trying, your behavior is unstable. You do it when you feel like it. You stop when you don't. You treat it like a hobby. You treat it like an experiment. When you see yourself as a trader, you show up. You execute. You follow rules. You treat it like a profession. You treat it like discipline. Identity drives behavior. Behavior drives results. Results reinforce identity. That's the loop. 20 consistent trades is the first time you build identity based on action, not fantasy. So let me speak directly to the viewer right now. If you've been stuck in the loop of strategy hopping, if you've been stuck in the loop of inconsistency, if you've been stuck in the loop of emotional trading, I want you to do something. Pause this video after it ends and write down one setup you will commit to for 20 trades. Then comment under this video what setup you chose. Comment it because public commitment creates pressure. Pressure creates discipline. Discipline creates results. And if you're serious about becoming consistent, share this video with a trader friend. Share it because most traders are losing, not because they're missing information, but because they're missing discipline. And discipline spreads when the message is shared. Now let's address the biggest objection. The biggest pushback I hear when I teach this concept is, what if I miss opportunities? What if the market changes? What if my setup doesn't appear? What if I'm not trading enough? That's the addiction talking. That's the impatience talking. That's the scarcity mindset talking. Profitability does not come from taking more trades. It comes from taking better trades consistently. It comes from controlling risk. It comes from having an edge. It comes from staying disciplined. If your setup only appears a few times a week, that's fine. You're building patience. You're building selectivity. You're building professionalism. The market will always be there. Opportunities are infinite. Your discipline is not. Your discipline is fragile, and it must be trained. 20 consistent trades trains it. And once it's trained, you can expand. You can add more setups, you can add more strategies, but you don't build a mansion on sand. You build the foundation first. Now I want to go into something deeper. The reason 20 consistent trades feels so hard for most traders is because it forces them to confront themselves without distractions. When you keep switching strategies, you always have an excuse. You can always blame the strategy. You can always blame the indicator. You can always blame the time frame. Consistency removes excuses. It forces you to face your execution. It forces you to face your discipline. It forces you to face your emotions. And that's why it's uncomfortable, because you're not just trading the market, you're trading yourself. This is why traders say trading is the greatest self-development journey. Because it exposes everything. It exposes impatience. It exposes greed. It exposes fear. It exposes ego. It exposes addiction. It exposes your need for control. And 20 consistent trades is the mirror. It shows you exactly who you are under pressure. Now, I'll be honest, some people are not ready for that mirror. Some people would rather keep the fantasy alive. They would rather keep the hope alive. They would rather keep believing they just need the secret. Because once they admit the issue is discipline, the responsibility is on them. But if you are watching Traders Mind TV, I'm assuming you are different. I'm assuming you're tired of excuses. I'm assuming you want the truth. I'm assuming you want to become dangerous in this game. So let's keep going. After 20 consistent trades, your chart time changes. Before consistency, chart time is chaos. You're staring at everything. You're reacting to every candle. You're watching every tick. You're trying to control. You're trying to force. After consistency, chart time becomes intentional. You know what you're looking for. You know what matters. You ignore noise. You wait. You strike when your setup appears. You don't overtrade. You don't chase. This is what professionals do. They don't stare at charts all day because they're bored. They treat trading like hunting. They wait, they observe, they execute. And that's why the quality of your life changes too. Because when you stop overtrading, you stop stressing. When you stop stressing, you stop making emotional decisions. When you stop making emotional decisions, you stop losing unnecessary money. When you stop losing unnecessary money, you stop feeling trapped. When you stop feeling trapped, you start enjoying the journey. Trading becomes sustainable, and sustainability is the hidden secret. Because trading is not a sprint. It's not a one-week flip. It's not a one-month grind. It's a lifetime skill. The traders who win are the ones who can stay in the game long enough for the edge to compound. 20 consistent trades is the beginning of staying in the game. Now I want to talk about the specific moment where traders usually break consistency. It's usually not after a loss. Surprisingly, it's after a win. Because wins inflate ego. Wins create overconfidence. Wins make you feel like you've mastered it. After a win, traders start thinking they can improvise. They start thinking they can break rules. They start thinking they can increase risk. They start thinking they can take trades outside the setup because they're feeling it. That's how accounts get blown, not from losses, from wins. So when you do 20 consistent trades, you're also training yourself to handle wins. You're training yourself to stay humble. You're training yourself to stay disciplined even when you feel unstoppable. That is the mark of a professional. A professional is not someone who stays calm when losing. A professional is someone who stays calm when winning, because winning can make you stupid. Now let me tell you another story because I've seen this happen too many times. There was a trader who started a challenge. 20 consistent trades. He was doing great. He was disciplined. He was journaling. He was calm. He hit trade 8 and he was up. He got excited. He started posting more. He started talking more. Then trade 9 hit. It was a win too. He started feeling like the market loved him. He started thinking, I'm finally in the zone. He started thinking, I can increase risk a little, just a little. Trade 10, he doubled his risk. He took the same setup but with more size. It lost. He lost more than usual. He felt the sting. He thought, I need to make that back. He took another trade outside the setup. It lost. He got angry. He revenge traded. He broke the challenge. By the end of the week, he was worse than before he started. Not because the market changed, because he changed. Consistency is fragile. It must be protected from ego and from fear. And 20 consistent trades teaches you how to protect it. If you're listening to this and you know you struggle after wins, if you know you tend to get reckless when you're up, like this video right now, because the real problem is not the market, it's the part of you that gets drunk on success. And subscribing is your way of choosing discipline over ego. Now let's talk about trade number 20 specifically. The reason trade 20 is such a milestone is because it forces patience. It forces delayed gratification. It forces you to stop chasing immediate validation. Most traders are addicted to immediate validation. They want to know right now if they're good. They want to know right now if the strategy works. They want to know right now if they're going to be rich. That addiction creates impulsive behavior. 20 consistent trades teaches you to operate without immediate validation. It teaches you to trust the process. And when you can trust the process, you unlock the real power of trading, compounding. Compounding requires time. Compounding requires consistency. Compounding requires patience. You cannot compound chaos. Now I want to make this extremely practical without turning it into a list, because you already know I don't do that step 1, step 2 fake guru format. I'm going to speak it naturally. When you commit to 20 consistent trades, you need to define your setup clearly enough that you can execute it without interpretation. Interpretation is where inconsistency lives. Interpretation is where emotions sneak in. Interpretation is where you start bending rules. Your setup should be so clear that if someone else looked at your chart, they could tell whether it's valid or not. It should not be based on vibes. It should not be based on feelings. It should not be based on, I think it might. It should be based on rules. Then you need to define your risk, not based on how confident you feel, not based on how much you want to make, based on what your account can handle. Risk should be consistent, because inconsistent risk creates inconsistent emotions, and inconsistent emotions create inconsistent behavior. Then you need to journal, because journaling turns emotion into data. Journaling turns pain into learning. Journaling turns confusion into clarity. After each trade, write down whether you followed rules, not whether you won. Following rules is the win. Profit is the result. And after 20 trades, review. Review not to judge yourself, but to learn. Learn what your win rate is. Learn what your average win is. Learn what your average loss is. Learn if the strategy has an edge. If it does, now you have confidence. If it doesn't, now you have clarity. Either way, you win. Now let's hit the most important mental shift that happens after 20 consistent trades. You stop seeking certainty and start seeking execution. Most traders want certainty. They want the trade to be guaranteed. They want to know it will win. They want to feel safe. Professionals don't seek certainty. They seek execution. They know uncertainty is part of the game. They know losses are part of the game. They know drawdowns are part of the game, so they focus on what they can control. And what can you control? Your execution, your risk, your discipline, your process. 20 consistent trades teaches you to focus on control. And once you focus on control, you stop being a victim of the market. You stop feeling like the market is doing something to you. You stop feeling cursed. You stop feeling unlucky. You start feeling empowered. And empowerment is everything. Because empowered traders don't panic. Empowered traders don't chase. Empowered traders don't revenge trade. Empowered traders don't beg for signals. Empowered traders don't need validation. Empowered traders execute. Now, I want to address the part of you that's listening to this and thinking, okay, but what if I can't even stay consistent for 20 trades? What if I fail the challenge? What if I break rules? Here's the truth. If you break consistency, that's the lesson. That's the data. That's the real reason you're not profitable. And that's not a reason to quit. That's a reason to train. You don't quit the gym because you can't lift heavy on day 1. You train until you can. Consistency is a skill. Discipline is a skill. It can be trained. And the fact that you struggle with it is not proof you're not meant for trading. It's proof you need to build it. Now let me tell you one more story, because this one is powerful. It's from the perspective of a trader who was about to quit. He had lost for months. He was exhausted. He was broke. He was embarrassed. He felt like trading was a scam. He decided before quitting he would do one last experiment. 20 consistent trades. One setup, same risk, same rules. He started. Trade 1 was a loss. He felt the familiar pain. Trade 2 was a loss. He felt hopeless. Trade 3 was a win. He felt relief. Trade 4 was a loss. He felt frustration. He wanted to quit. He wanted to stop. But he told himself, I'm not allowed to stop until I hit 20. Not because I want money, because I want to know the truth. He hit trade 10. He was slightly down. He hit trade 15. He was break even. He hit trade 20. He was slightly up. He didn't become rich, but he became calm. And that calm made him realize something. The reason he was losing wasn't because trading didn't work. It was because he never gave anything a chance to work. He realized he had been sabotaging himself. That trader stayed. He continued. He refined. He improved. And months later, he became profitable. It started with 20 consistent trades. Now I want to bring this home. If you've watched this far, you already know what you need to do. You don't need more information. You don't need more strategies. You don't need more indicators. You need 20 consistent trades. You need to stop running. You need to stop searching. You need to stop fantasizing. You need to execute. If you're ready to commit, comment, "I'm doing 20" under this video. Comment it because it will be your contract with yourself. And when you see your own words, you'll remember what you promised. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe. Subscribe because your trading journey will only go as far as your mindset can carry it. And this channel is here to build that mindset. Now, the final truth. Everything changes after 20 consistent trades because after 20 consistent trades, you finally stop being the problem. The market was never the enemy. The market was the teacher. The market was exposing your inconsistency. When you become consistent, you graduate from the chaotic phase. You step into the professional phase. You step into the calm phase. And from there, the game becomes about refinement, not survival. It becomes about scaling, not scrambling. It becomes about mastery, not confusion. And that is when trading starts paying you what you've been chasing. Not because the market suddenly likes you, because you finally earned it. Because you finally became the type of person who can hold it. Because you finally did what most traders refuse to do. You stayed consistent long enough for everything to change. And if this video gave you clarity, like it. Like it because clarity is rare in this space, and supporting real clarity helps more traders find it. Share it with someone who's stuck because one message can save them years of pain. And subscribe because this is only the beginning.